This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library of
enough. You can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing. So just jump and do that if you're looking for the best price that you can get Truefire All Access for. Okay, so naturally, once Line 6 announced the Helix Stadium and Helix Stadium XL, my first questions were, what happens to the Helix now? And so I guess a lot of you watching this are going to be Helix users, and I thought there were some things that were revealed and talked about that I thought might bear discussion, because there's some little subtleties in here that I think might be important to tease out and kind of ask where this leaves us Helix owners. Of course, the main kind of thing with this is that the Helix price has kind of dropped now. I don't know who was going out and buying a brand new Helix in 2025 anyway. I've kind of felt like for years, and I've put out videos to this effect, it felt like the Helix was coming to the end of the life cycle, just because rates of update had slowed down. So therefore, I assume they must be working on something. And, you know, personally, when I've been talking to people that are kind of on the fence about buying one, I just say, you know, an HX Stomp will do most of what the Helix can do in some regards, at least tonally, right? Run everything that can run on the Helix. It's less processing power, but equally there was less money invested in it. And I kind of felt like that was the sensible, prudent thing to do if you didn't have loads of money to spaff up the wall. It looks like I was sort of right in that regard, I think, but let me know in the comments if you bought a Helix recently and you're still happy with that purchase, or likewise if you're kind of thinking, oh, I wish I'd waited. Of course, you're not going to be able to get one of these units until the fall of 2025 anyway, so in any case, there's still plenty of life left in the Helix, even if you did ditch it on day one of the Stadium, right? kind of the key point here is this is going to be the first time that there's, I'm going to use this word again, bifurcation of pre-Helix Stadium and post. So one of the key things that they said that the Helix is not being abandoned and that updates are still going to come. However, I have had it confirmed that the Agora, the new amp modeling, so they've got 16 new amp models that will run on Helix Stadium, will not be coming to the Helix. So that is confirmed to be the case, and I think Igor also confirmed this on Reddit. But that's something important to know, right? That you're not going to be getting into this new amp modeling thing unless you're jumping into the Stadium. So that's one thing worth bearing in mind. Now, the next thing that we can therefore determine from that is that Helix Native and Helix Stadium are not going to be compatible. Now, this, for me, is kind of a key reason that I think some people might hold off a bit, because if you're like me and your workflow involves Helix Native, then one of the things that I really appreciate about the Helix and the Helix Native thing is that this is the one kind of device that has complete compatibility between the DAW workspace and the actual real world workspace. So that was one of the things that I really appreciated about the Helix. We can assume that because the Agora amp models are not coming to Helix, that they're not going to come to Helix Native either. I don't think Helix Native was launched at the same time as the actual Helix anyway. I'll just flash up on screen when that actually came. But you could assume that there might be some gap if they are going to do something with this anyway as well. So we know that at launch, essentially there will be this gap, right? The other key thing that I think is worth bearing in mind is that Eric specifically said that at launch, the Proxy amp capturing, profiling technology is not going to be there. So that's another thing where if you were jumping into this thinking, right, that's exactly what I need, that's not going to be there yet. And so I think it's one of those things where if you're actually desperately interested in profiling and capture, I guess my question would be, how come you haven't already got like a ToneX One or a Nano Cortex or like a Valton GP5, Valiton, however you say that? Because those devices can already load these NAM captures or do some form of capture themselves, and I think could complement the Helix quite nicely anyway. And on top of that, another thing to bear in mind is that they're favoring their own proprietary technology, and the NAM compatibility factor is still a question mark. So in terms of like gear choices and stuff like that, it's not going to be available till fall. That modeling profiling thing is not going to be available at launch anyway. So again, it kind of just leaves you in the space where it's like, well, what I could do with the Helix, kind of subtly different to what I'd be able to do with this newer unit anyway. And if the newer unit isn't going to do the stuff at launch, like capturing, then if you're really in the mood for a capture, Fritzl, then you should probably be thinking about how you're going to incorporate into that into your existing rig already. Another thing which I guess I'll talk about in a different video would be kind of the price thing, because, you know, I've had conversations with chaps and that price has, I think, been a bit of a surprise to some people. When the Helix came out at launch, it was $14.99. If you adjust for inflation, that is about what the Stadium XL is costing. So what appears expensive 10 years later due to inflation, all that stuff, yes, it is actually expensive, right? Because, you know, our wages as musicians haven't gone up in that time. But that is kind of just what it is. So yes, I think there's realistic expectations that some of the newer technology is going to even be more costly. I think there was 2 extra encoder knobs. Touchscreen is obviously more expensive than this little screen. It's got beefier processors in there as well. So you could see that there probably is a meaningful extra cost above inflation for that unit they've only really kept it around sort of like inflation levels. So there is that as well. But let me know in the comments how you feel about that, and whether you're kind of considering like how would this fit into your workflow. Are you a native user? Myself, I would say I'm predominantly a Helix Native user at this point rather than the hardware. So that kind of leaves me in a situation where the Helix Floor, the HX Stomp, or Helix Native are still going to be what I use more of the time. The other thing to question is like, how much do you feel like you've exhausted what's in the Helix? Are you happy with the amp models as they are? Are you getting tones that you dig? Are you getting the power that you feel like you need? I think once you spread things across 2 processors, the Helix does not feel underpowered to me. The only aspect where it possibly does is where you use like multiple pitch blocks. So yeah, that's that. But I kind of thought it was something to kind of ask for us Helix users, what happens next. So they're not discontinuing the Helix. Agora amp models won't be coming to the Helix or HX Stomp or Helix Native. I think that kind of clears that up. And we're now in this kind of new space where the Helix sort of ecosystem continues to evolve, but at the top of the Helix ecosystem there's going to be a different set of updates, which is kind of new, right? New territory. At least this is like 10 years into the life of the Helix where this is happening. So like, I think there's enough goodwill that as a community, I think we're largely going to be accepting that that feels fair. Let me know in the comments if you have a different opinion to that. But yes, so that's that. Cheers for stopping by.